In this lecture, we will finish looking at the Constitution and examine other parts of government that evolved over the years. One of the outstanding features of the Constitution of the United States is its longevity and the fact that it is the world's oldest living constitution. This derives from its flexibility. It has changed with the times and is often described as a living, breathing document. The elastic clause and the amendment process allow it this flexibility. We have touched upon the elastic clause already, which allows government to pass laws that are necessary and proper. When you use the implied power clause, we call that loose construction or interpretation. Believing that the government should stick strictly to the powers given it in the Constitution is called strict construction. An example of how this interpretation worked was the argument between Hamilton, a loose constructionist and supporter of implied power, and Jefferson, a strict constructionist. Government should strictly stick to enumerated, delegated, or expressed powers. Their argument was over a national bank. Hamilton believed the government could establish a national bank using the implied power provision, but Jefferson said no. They went to Washington to see what he would say. Jefferson reiterated his argument that government should be confined to enumerated powers, that is, those specifically listed in the Constitution. Hamilton then put forward his argument. The Constitution, he said, gave the government power over a navy and crimes committed on the sea. To protect US ships from crashing into rocks, the government built lighthouses. But nowhere in the Constitution does it say the government could build lighthouses. But they use the implied powers because it is necessary and proper. If the Constitution, the government is given the power to collect taxes, so surely it is necessary and proper they should establish a bank to keep the money in. Washington agreed with Hamilton, and using implied powers, a national bank was established. The Constitution also changes with the amendment process. It has been formally changed 27 times. Here we see how it's done. A proposed amendment can be proposed by 2/3 votes of both houses in Congress, or proposed by 2/3 vote of national conventions called by Congress on request of 2/3 of state legislations. Most of them have been proposed by Congress, used successfully 26 times and used once to repeal prohibition. Ratification then is passage by 3/4 of state legislatures, which is the way it is most commonly done, or else passage by 3/4 of state conventions. Know that there is no time limit on the state legislatures passing an amendment. The 27th Amendment, which concerns congressional pay, if Congress get a pay rise, it cannot go into effect till after the next congressional elections. It was adopted finally in 1992, but it took 202 years for approval. Students should know there are 27 amendments. Listed are some of the amendments. Amendments 1 to 10 are the Bill of Rights, 13, 14, 50, Civil Rights Amendments, Amendment 19, Women Voting Rights, Amendment 21, repeal of Amendment 18 was prohibition, and Amendment 26 gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. We already covered a couple in previous lectures. The Bill of Rights is very important for individual rights. For example, the First Amendment protects freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. The freedom of religion actually falls under the saying establishment of religion, which means the government cannot pass laws preferring one religion over another. This is called the Establishment Clause. Other amendments are listed here, as I mentioned, and it is important to know your 27 amendments, particularly the first 10, the Bill of Rights. There are many aspects of government today that are not mentioned in the Constitution, but are a very important part. These are part of what we call the unwritten Constitution. The Cabinet is a group of advisors that meets with the President mostly on Wednesdays, and the executive branch has created different departments to deal with national affairs. There are 17 executive departments, ranging from the Department of State to the last one created, the Department of Homeland Security. Today there are two major political parties, Democrats and Republicans. Democrats are represented by a donkey and the color blue, and elephants by an elephant and a red. That's why you see most pictures, you see Obama has a blue tie on and Trump invariably wears a red tie. Lobbyists are people who try and influence legislation. The name comes from originally people with money standing in the lobby before the congressmen went into the chambers. Today, there are strict rules regarding lobbyists and money. Television debates are another important part of politics. The first one featured in 1960 John F. Kennedy against Richard Nixon. It was held in the evening, and Nixon had a heavy beard, but he had not shaved. This then gave him a negative look and helped Kennedy win the election. The Trump-Clinton debates had the highest viewership ever for TV debates. Campaign finance is important in politics. People are limited to the amount of money they can give to candidates. Gerrymandering is reapportioning or maintaining districts to suit one party over another. Finally, if the president dies, there is a system of succession. Vice President, Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, then the secretaries of the different cabinet departments, starting with Secretary of State. So Mike Pompeo, the current Secretary of State, would be fifth in line for the presidency. The 12th, 22nd and 25th amendments deal with presidential succession and terms. Other rules have also been added, for example, the lone survivor rule. The Constitution calls for the State of the Union address every January to be given by the President to tell Congress and all other branches of government how the country is doing. But if a bomb were to explode and kill everyone, who would run the country? What happens is they pick somebody, a lone survivor, and take him to a safe place. It may be a cabinet head, it may be a member of Congress, and they keep them there in case some catastrophe does hit. That is known as the lone survivor rule. The role of the president has expanded since George Washington. Here we see the 7 different roles the president plays. We say hats because he puts a different hat on for each role, theoretically speaking. For example, as head of state, he will represent America at other leaders' funerals. As party leader, he campaigns for other Republicans or Democrats seeking office. And as chief diplomat, he signs treaties with other nations. Article 7 of the Constitution deals with ratification, and unlike the Articles of Confederation that needed all 13 states, the Constitution only needed 9. New York was the last state to ratify it, but really they needed everyone to sign the Constitution or the new government couldn't work. Those in favour of ratification were called Federalists, and those against were called Anti-Federalists. These were in effect the first political parties, and the goals were of the Federalists more government and of the Anti-Federalists less government. The password today is Hamilton. I repeat, the password today is Hamilton. As we know, the Constitution was ratified. But why did the Federalists win? 1. Most of the Federalists were lawyers and thinkers. They saw the need for financial stability, an approach that appealed to the money classes in society. With this financial support, they set out to win the hearts of the people. They had a firm plan. They had a firm plan and a framework of government. 2. The odds were in favor of the Federalists, and their financing and organization convinced George Washington to support ratification. With his reputation and leadership, his vote was crucial. The Federalist Papers, 85 anonymous installments in newspapers, went in a line-by-line argument of why the Constitution should be ratified. Written by John Jay, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton, they focused on human nature, national power, democracy, limited government, society, and freedom. Finally, the Anti-Federalists agreed to the adoption if a Bill of Rights were to be included. The Bill of Rights was then adopted in 1791 and protects the rights of citizens. In 1789, George Washington got all 69 electoral votes and became president. We use the term precedent when describing George Washington's term in office because he set the example for later presidents. He adopted a formality to the office and deliberately established a distance of respect between himself and the people. He created a cabinet to advise him on affairs, and as we have seen, he supported the growth of the federal government. His crushing of the Whiskey Rebellion was in marked contrast to Shays' Rebellion, which occurred during the Articles of Confederation. Washington's crushing of the Whiskey Rebellion showed that a strong government was needed. With the Constitution, the United States had found the right balance of power between the national government and the states' governments. Please complete the following questions and put the answers in the relevant spot in the Google Classroom. I will give you some time for each question. If you need more, please pause the video. This concludes our lecture for today. Thank you.